All right, so I thought I would make an update for kind of my final quote unquote Voodoo setup for Classic slash what I'm going to be kind of running into TBC to start. So if you kind of see my other videos, you can kind of see an evolution and things that have changed. But I'll kind of just go over some of the basics of Voodoo and then some of the things that I have kind of settled on as I don't know over the entirety of Classic as kind of like a best practice or whatever term you want to use for it. But kind of like what I have found is like most useful and has worked the best for me. So first off, let's kind of start here. So I've got 8 frames, right? One for each group. I don't have pets or anything shown. You can do that if you want by going into groups and going to special and then going to things like pets or whatever. But I just want to see the groups. Also, unlike most people, mine go from right to left. It's just a weird thing that's just I always because my target's here and my target is here, and my guild always puts the tanks in group 1. I like to be able to see when I'm looking at my target, here, or in my target here, I like to see all my tanks in that first row. That's basically all it is. And then you can see I've got the headers turned on, and here I've got them turned on, so I can see group 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's not something you necessarily need to do. I have it set up like that solely because when I'm buffing groups, if someone says, hey, this, if I'm in charge of normally 5 and 6 for fort and spirit and everything else, right? Also, it's kind of like that because it'll mean that when it comes TBC time for a circle of healing, I'll be very able to clearly see what group I'm hitting, or if, I know that if I'm hitting this target here because he's low with prayer or with circle of healing, it's also going to heal all these people as well. So it's just kind of a nice thing that kind of got myself used to now because I know it's going to come into play later. What else? So the frames you can kind of see here. Well, I guess I'll just kind of start. So I'll just kind of go over some things here. So sizing, this is just a size that I like. I use 9056. It's kind of what I found works for me size-wise and fitting the rest of all my interface in. In terms of the actual bar texture, I use detail flat, which is number 8 on the texture list. I have it colorized by class. I have the text pop a little bit more, so I use size 10 with an outline and shadow turned on. I've got like the percentages hidden because I don't really care about that. It's just kind of extra stuff. I do have, you can kind of see it here, I have buffs down here in the bottom as well as debuffs with tooltips on. So like when a tank, for example, I can see who's shielded, right? So they have weakened soul, and I can see a timer when it's going to fall off for me and everyone else's. And if I hover over it, it tells me in the corner. You can see right there in the corner by ID. On the other side of the toolbox by ID, it says the name of the person who put the buff on. I can see renews. I can see like lower level buffs as well as higher level buffs, and they actually change out. And I do that just to go over that real quick. Actually, I'll get to that in a second. But for now, that's pretty much just the basics of it. I can see, the important things like Fear Ward, Spirit. I actually didn't cast that on myself, but you can kind of see it there. So this way I can see everyone in the raid who's missing what buffs. Like it's easy to rebuff. I can track Fear Wards to see, what tanks and rogues are missing Fear Wards, especially in, Nax Trash. There's quite a lot of mobs that fear. And these are also good things to have, going into TBC because a lot of these buffs are going to be carrying forward, and a lot of these buffs you're going to be also needing to track. And you'll be able to put other stuff in there as well. But Prayer of Mending will be one you want to track definitely. So just real quick on how I track those. That's under the hot icons here. So you can see I've got Power Word Shield in the first slot, then Renew, Fear Ward, Fort, Spirit, Greater Heal. So this would probably be the one that I would change right here. So this right here tracks my Greater Heal over. So whenever I'm using my 8 out of 8 set and I cast a Greater Heal, the 8 out of 8 set puts an extra Renew on the target. This lets me see that Renew, and so I track them. I can track actual Renew and Greater Heal Renew differently, and you can kind of see the ID there. That's basically what I'm looking at here. So you can kind of see how I'm just tracking those. And the reason I do that is because I don't so much use the Greater Heal thing, but it's nice to track. I do a lot of kind of a priest and other healer kind of leading in our guild. So it's nice to be able to see things like, making sure people are running, see who's got those hots on them, etc. I also got this one in here for auras. So this one just is solely so I can make double check when we're doing SAF that all the paladins have their auras on. It's dumb, but that's something else. So these are 2 slots I would probably honestly change come TBC. I'd probably shift these down honestly to these slots, and then in here I'd put things like Prayer of Mending, or what else? I'd probably just put Prayer of Mending in there. Maybe some shaman stuff like Bloodlust, or if something like that needs to be tracked in terms of the rotation or drums, or there's all kinds of things you can put in there. But I think I would definitely move 8 out of 8. That's not going to be of use, and the aura one's not going to be of use anymore. And I would probably just shift these 3 buffs down. Still have them there, but I would just shift them down in these lower slots so they're on that side of the frame, and then keep the more important ones like Prayer of Mending, Renew, Shield. Definitely keep all of that. Maybe you could put Inspiration in there, but I really don't care about Inspiration if it's on main tanks, and I have my LVY set up so that I can already see Inspiration when it procs there. I can already see Renew if I were to cast Renew on myself. I can already see it pop up there, so I'm able to kind of track it there. Also, I can obviously, if I'm targeting a friendly, I can see it there. Yeah, so those are my hot icons. If you want to know how more about how to set those up, I think I've been doing it in my previous video, but really quickly, you just go to, there's a few ways to get to it, but if you go to General, let me just go back here so it just makes it more easy to see. So if you go to open up General, you're going to see something like this. Down here, you're going to see bouquets. You're going to click on that, and you would just type in the name of one in here, and then hit the new button, and then you just hit the plus until you have a priority here. And then you would just type in the name and then set it. It's probably going to be on glossy. You set it default, and then you'll swap the icon to the actual normal icon. And so just to give you an example here, you can so there's Divine Spirit and Prayer Spirit. So by putting these both in here, and the prayer on the higher priority, moving it up one instead of down one, like using the arrows, it means that if I were to have, so you can see here, I've got prayer, right? Or I've got just Divine Spirit. But if I click prayer, instead of adding it out here to the side, it actually puts it on top of the other one. So that way you can put buffs that kind of override each other, like, basically the 3 main priest buffs, like prayer, shadow protection, and fortitude. They're all there's a 30-minute and an hour-long version, and they replace each other. So this way, when you're looking at your raid frames, you'll be able to see who's got a short buff because maybe they just got rezzed and don't want to spend a full bunch of mana, but you're still able to track that. So that way you can see both, and they're in the same slots. You're not having to take up 2 slots in your frame. And the reason to bring that up is because one downside of Vuhdo is you only have 7 slots here, so 7 little squares across the frame where you can put stuff. You don't have any more than that, so you have to kind of be creative if you're trying to track more than 7 buffs, which I'm trying to do here. So I've got Fort, Prayer, and actually don't have Shadow Protection. Maybe that's what you could put in here, would be Shadow Protection. Probably should track that. Oh well, anyways, I'm getting a little long here, so that's pretty much kind of the gist of it. Like I said, I can see that stuff. Some other things I've kind of changed, or I don't really know how I'm going to show this. Well, let's see if I can kind of show it with, if I do the panels here and I do the sim. Okay, you can kind of see it. So if you see here, whenever someone gets threat on a mob, or a mob targets them directly, it puts this red frame around the edge there. That's actually over here from the indicator side right here. You see here, the outer and inner. I have it on the outer. That's just how I prefer it. But yeah, all I did was, it's aggro, flag aggro, type, yada, yada, yada. All this should be done for you by default with Vuhdo. It's just a matter of going down here and checking the box if this isn't already set. And the other thing I did was, I think its default is 1 point. I made it 3 just to make it a little bit more visible. And the main reason I use that is because, let's say, looking at these frames here, if I see, this priest has threat on a mob and then half health, if you're a Nax, that means that the next hit is probably going to kill that priest. So, in that case, I'm not trying to heal the person. I'm going to bubble them and pray to God that they live through the next hit, right? And then maybe someone will taunt it off them in that, GCD, or someone will land a bop at the same time, or the priest will lip, or whatever. So it's just a matter of seeing where aggro is changing. Normally, ideally, if you got things set up the way I do here, and your tanks are all here, normally it'll all be in this area, or at least on this side, because normally groups 1 through 4 in my guild are the tanks and melees and your hunter groups and rogues and stuff. Having threat in these frames is normally bad because these are your casters and healers, normally how we have things set up. So basically, we kind of go through And I've got that set. I had the mouse over on for a while, which is this kind of frame. I don't know how to really describe it. That kind of highlights. It'll put like a sheen over something when you kind of put your mouse over it. I didn't really like that. So instead, I have just the outer border kind of highlighting. Also, there's kind of like a highlight that also goes on when you cast heal. Also got an add-on that kind of that's what that is spamming right there. Just watches your casts. That's pretty much it, man. Like I don't really think there's too much else I've done. I went into colors and messed with some stuff like in terms of like range, so I can, changing the transparency and color of people that are out of range or people that are dead or DC'd. You're just going in here. I adjusted the color of mana just so it's a little bit easier to read and so it doesn't blend in with as many things. Because the dark blue that it kind of comes with is kind of closer to the Maelstrom color you see there. I didn't really like it. It was kind of blended in a little bit too hard. Some other things that kind of tweaked was, where was it? None of that really. One thing I've used a few times actually is, so one thing I've had people ask in my guild specifically was, how do I, so when you click to heal, you'll know, so I target this guy, my target's here, right? When I target, I'm changing targets by clicking on things or whatever, right? Or hitting tab, right? But when I heal, I don't actually change targets. And I think I'll brought this up in another video. There's an option to do that. I think in MISC here, miscellaneous, yeah, when you do that, it'll target at the same time. I don't like that personally because if I want to keep my target on, let's, for example, if I'm raid healing, out here in the raid, there's some damage going on, like on Sappron, and everyone's taking damage. I still want to have my target on the boss, for one, so I can see his HP, but two, so I can also see its target, so I can keep an eye on the tank. So I can see his debuffs, so I can see his buffs, all that kind of stuff, right? So yeah, that's my target up there. So I like to have that unchecked. And so when I'm healing, I'm not changing my target, right? It's not swapping. But let's say you have to buff somebody. Do you have to, via this method of healing, the only way to target them would be to like click their frame somewhere else. Like if you've got like the LVI ones, which now you have to have a whole nother set of raid frames, or you have to do a /target their name, or you have to find them literally in the world like this and click on them. Or what I do is I just went over here to one of these other buttons. So this one is specifically Alt plus Control, and I just type in the word target, and you see the little command line highlight there. And so now when I hit Control plus Alt, and then I click, it targets them. So it's just a way that if I need a buff group, if I need a buff group 1, I can just Control click there instead of having to find someone in that group to then target in the world, or type someone's name /target, and just makes it easy. Along with that, you can also go in here and, just as an example, I'll use car. This is a PI macro I have. So I've got a bunch of them actually for a bunch of different mages and warlocks in my guild. Oh god, nope, don't look at that. That's a mess. Another thing you can do is, most people don't know this, but it's very helpful. If you actually type in the title of your macro, it'll actually allow you to use a macro. So for instance, if you have some, just as an example, right? So, this flash heal one right here, that's just a flash heal. It's on mouse over. But if you wanted to have some kind of like super complicated, I don't know. I don't know what it could be. Maybe it's a PI macro, or maybe it's some trinket macro, or some other kind of macro. I don't know what it is. But if you wanted to, in theory, you could program some macro in here, right? Somewhere in here. And all you'd have to do is type in the name of the macro here, or in any one of these lines, right? I can type in like cycle here, and boom, it'll put it in there. And now when I click my middle mouse button, well, actually that's not gonna work because I've got it bound to something else. But if I didn't have it bound to something else, like if I were to go in here and say Control plus Shift plus Alt, oh wait, no, that would work. Yeah. That was not the best way of demonstrating that. I forgot. So oh, it's not triggering because I don't have that trinket equipped. That's annoying. Well, okay, well, I showed a bad macro, but regardless, it clicked the first part, whatever. If you type a macro in there, it'll like spell or command, it'll tell you if it's right or wrong, right? And if it's right, it'll highlight as macro. And it's just a way that you can put some more fancy macros and tie them into here without having to go into the local keys and programming a macro specifically, right? If you didn't want to do that. Anyways, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, it did not like that. Anyways, and that's pretty much, I kind of think all I got for you. I guess just some other things real quick that I could bring up would be in scanners here. I turned the global refresh rate down to minimum just to get kind of faster updates on my bars. Also, I went in here and filtered by my heal spell instead of this is just kind of mostly annoying things. That should actually be off. I don't know why it's showing that. For threat incoming, just make sure I have like the text off, but I have the overheals on myself and others so I can see incoming heals. None of that really matters. None of that really matters. None of this really matters. Most of this stuff is pretty basic and stuff I've covered up before. For debuffs, you know, I show the icons like I showed you in the top corner when I do that, right? I show the duration. I show them. I don't just show boss, and I don't show removable. And I brought that up before that, you know, don't just show debuffs you can dispel unless you only want to see that. But if it normally helps to be able to see things like Mortal Strike on a tank, right? You can't remove that debuff, but it's good to know it's there because maybe instead of casting a heal, that's going to get reduced by 50 or 75% because it could also be a curse version. You know, maybe you want to put a shield on the person instead because, you know, in that window where they have that damage on them, you're going to be able to, you know, the effective healing of a shield is much greater than, you know, 75 or 50% reduced greater heal or flash heal. That's going to heal for 100 damage versus a 1200 shield. Long story short, but you can change position in the scale, yada, yada, yada. That's pretty much it. Some other things I want to bring up, maybe just some easy use stuff. So when it comes to making I recommend making a bunch of profiles. So this is kind of my raid profile here. If I wanted to make a new one, I would just type in a new name here and hit save. And then I could go make a bunch of changes to that profile and then it would save it. And I want to make another one, I could type in a new name and hit save, etc. And I want to change my profiles. So just kind of, you can just right click on this and go to profiles and just swap between them, right? I've got a bunch of different ones in here. I have a test one where I was trying to make like a, oh, that one just straight up disappeared. Oh no, it's down here for some reason. This is like a, oh well, if it shows it actually. Just a show. Yeah, so I made kind of a decursive version for some mage friends of mine that was just kind of like a basic version. That's kind of mimicking decursive. Discard that, changes. What else do I got in here? I got this gigantic one for when I've got, you know, my multi-boxing going, and this window is like, you know, basically in this tiny little space here, so I make them gigantic so I can see them and click them easier. Yeah, that's what that looks like. And then I got my standard, that's a test decurse, and then my standard raid heal frames. You can also do key setups as well. So you can also program in like with key layouts. You can go in here and hook up like specific. Oh, man, this thing really screwed up when I changed that, huh? You can go in. Oh, man, it is really screwed up. I might try to reload here, but basically, however you have this stuff set up in here with the spells and clicks and everything, you can basically assign those into different kinds, like standard or whatever, and you can swap between those as well. So maybe you have a PvP one, and you have another version as well. That's maybe for raiding or something. I've just got basically one for standard that I just kind of use default, and I've got a boxed one. So like the difference would be like a click would be a bubble instead of a heal or something like that, right? That's pretty much it. In terms of sharing, you can share these things, you know, via giant text strings or by like targeting a person, getting angry with them, and clicking the button, and that does literally just like a whole like load thing, and that's kind of just some peripherally stuff. And that's pretty much it. In terms of other things I might bring up, I guess for LVUI, I just have a custom setup, you know. I've got some bars down here. Oh, I've got a bar down here as well. It's kind of hidden. It's for mouse over just to hold some extra keybind stuff, but it's hidden when I don't need it. I got a single button here that I kind of made just for being able to hit PI because I've been fucking up, you know, when I had it keybound, hitting it wrong times and pissing off some mages and warlocks. So I bound it to a macro. Basically, they send me a tell, and then a little thing pops up saying that, and then I got a button that I click, and it sends a PI out to them. And then, changes the target back kind of thing. Just makes it nice and easy. That's really it. For weak auras, I've got 1 trillion weak auras. Probably too many, honestly. I don't think there's too much here that's all that relevant. These are kind of the main ones I have, I guess I should say. So I got that's my POI alert. I got one that tracks my cooldown on barrier, right? I got some unit frame stuff. I got one that actually puts a little bop icon on a unit frame whenever someone gets bopped, so I can clearly see that they're bopped, and it's got the cooldown on it too, or duration I should say. That way I can, I make sure that if I see a mage bar highlight with that red border, they got threat. But then I see a bop on them, I know I don't need to like panic just dump heals or panic shield them, And also I can track like, okay, well that bop is on them and it's about to fade and they still have threat, or they're still taking damage, I need to keep healing kind of thing, It just gives you more information that helps you stabilize. I got a little mana tracker here. I'd say I have a mana consumption one that'll actually let you know, like based on your mana threshold, when to use not when to use, but when using a mana pot or a demonic rune can't possibly overcap your mana. So like if you're missing 100 mana, it won't pop up. But when you're missing, 2250 mana, it'll let you know, hey, hit a mana pot. If you hit a mana pot now, you won't lose any of that mana, and it's kind of optimal. So it's just a way to help me track, on fights like Patchwork or Sap where you're using a ton of these consumes. It's nice to be able to have that in your head of, hey, that was a good time to hit this without having to worry about what percentage is my mana at. Okay, I can hit it. It's just a quick way of, I see that, I know I can hit it. And then it disappears, if you're below that threshold on mana, and it's on cooldown, and then when it's off cooldown and you're below that threshold, it'll pop back up, and it prioritizes, that over demo runes, and etc., right? I've got some other ones that are kind of hard to show off here. I've got some ones that I basically have set up that will put kind of like a border around a frame that kind of just gives me an eyeball when something drops below 50%. So whenever a player drops below 50% HP, I can kind of see that, because in their frame will get a little like, well, let's see if I can find an example of it. I got another one for that. It kind of looks like, it kind of does that whole thing around the edges where it's got the little dashes spinning around the edge. It does that, but on the frame itself, just to kind of give me a heads up, like, hey, this person's at 50%. Not that I won't be able to see that, but when you got 40 frames, there's a ton of damage going out. Sometimes it's nice. And I've got another one for when that happens in my tanks, just so that, if I'm raid healing out here and I've got some tank shit going on over here, maybe I wouldn't see that right away, but with those things popping up, the fact of it loading in or loading out, kind of that flash gets your peripheral and gets your attention to shift. Same thing with the bops. Yeah, that's pretty much it. This is pretty much the interface, I've kind of refined overall a Classic. You can go back and kind of see how it's changed from other videos, but I think this is pretty happy with this. I feel like I do pretty well healing wise with this setup, and probably what I'll be running in a TBC. I think the only changes really should come TBC may be some stuff around shamans in terms of seeing buffs, maybe some stuff around mana, weak auras and stuff, also around shamans, making sure I'm in range of mana spring and tide. That's pretty much it. Yeah, I can't really think of I wonder, I guess probably some stuff around the new priest abilities. Like I said, putting Prayer of Mending, kind of like a renew tracker there. I don't think Symbol of Hope. I don't think anything else really. Maybe some stuff around Shadow Fiend. I might, but I mean, these are minor things. I don't think they're going to really come up too much. But I think this interface is pretty much going to do the job. And probably what I run. I mean, I may tweak some stuff aesthetically, like I said, when we get shamans, because I think right now shamans and paladins are both pink in the settings, so I might have to change one to blue and one to pink, like it is more in retail. But that's pretty much it. If you have any questions, post them down below. I try to get back to people in terms of requests for weak auras or links to interface stuff, or exports of any of my setup. But yeah, I hope it's been helpful to you guys over the duration of Classic, and hopefully it'll suit you well for the rest of Classic or Classic era if you continue to go play that, or in the TBC if you choose to play that. So I wish you guys all the best and hope you're having fun in Nax. See you guys in TBC.